A guten Erev Shabbos. Moshe Rabbeinu is Moses, our teacher, whose leadership and advocacy leads to one of the great peak moments in Jewish history in this week's Parsha, where Pharaoh is finally convinced. Okay, it takes 10 plagues. That's some convincing. Anyway, Pharaoh finally gives in and says, let this people go. Let the Hebrews leave Egypt and go serve their God on Mount Sinai. The Exodus happens here in Parshas Bo. But the process of Pharaoh changing his mind was not in the blink of an eye, was not overnight. The sources say that the plagues actually stretched over a period of more than 8 months, from the first plague starting Rosh Chodesh Av through the 10th plague of the firstborn on the 15th of Nisan. It was a tough year in Egypt, that's for sure. Throughout last week's Sedra, Pharaoh waffled and wavered. One day he was ready to let us go. The next day he changed his mind. It was quite an emotional roller coaster. This week you see evidence of Pharaoh finally beginning to confront reality. About the time of the 8th plague, Pharaoh says, go serve your God. And by the way, which ones are going? Lechu ivdu es Hashem Elokechem. Mi v'mi ha'holchim, he says. There was a little shift in perspective going on in Pharaoh's head. He said to Moshe, look, we've known each other for a long time. I don't want to see you fail. I know these Jews. They won't be so keen on leaving. That's why he says, Mi v'mi ha'holchim. Who exactly do you think is going to be ready to pack up and leave already? Moshe says, you have no idea. Just open up the doors to freedom and you'll see who goes. Moshe says, B'na'arenu v'izkenenu nelech. We'll go with our young kids, with our seniors, B'vanenu v'vnoisenu, with our sons and our daughters, we will go out. And so they did. And so we continue to tell the story here in this week's Parsha. And also we sit down once a year, maybe 2 nights a year, for 2 Sedarim at the Passover Seder to tell the story. It's about paying it forward, passing the story on to the generations. In fact, that's just what our Parsha tells us at the very outset. The second verse of Parshas Bo, God says to Moshe, you will then be able to tell your children and your grandchildren my miraculous wonders that I performed among them, and you will know that I am God. V'yadaitem ki ani Hashem. That's exactly what we do. Now, if you reflect on that passage for just a moment, you think, wait a second, the Torah is telling us to tell the story of the Exodus to our children and to our grandchildren so that they will know what happened and know that God is God. Didn't it mean to write v'yedu so that they will know? Why does it say v'yadaitem and you will know? Maybe it's because parenting, as any parent will tell you, happens on more than one level, to say the least. Parents teach their children about God, about Torah, about Yiddishkeit, what it means to be a Jew. We hope and we pray that our efforts take hold and have an effect, and we merit to have children who continue living as Jews as fully as they possibly can. That's one level. Another level is that through teaching our children in that process, we see in ourselves a deepening and strengthening of commitment and knowledge and appreciation of who we are, what we do, and why we do it. We reach a point with all those questions about why do we do this and what does that mean and this and that. At a certain point, we just have to dig down deep within ourselves and ask ourselves those same questions. The author Bashevis Singer, the only Nobel Prize winner who wrote in Yiddish, once gave a great little talk called 10 Reasons Why I Write for Children. One thing he says, reason number 9, in fact, on his list, he says, when something is boring, children yawn openly, without shame or fear of authority, which means to say, if you're talking to children, if you're writing for children, if you're telling them a story, you better keep it lively, keep it engaging, keep it exciting. Otherwise, they'll get bored, they'll yawn in your face or go to sleep, or go do something else more fun, i.e. screens. This is the call we answer every springtime when we come to the Seder, to keep it lively, to keep it engaging, keep the questions coming. In fact, those 4 kids who ask different questions in the Seder are mostly found in our Parsha this week. The truth is, if it's only a story, or if it's only history, our kids won't be into it because we won't be into it. If it's real, and it's part of who we are and how we live, that's a different story. That's v'yadaitem, as the verse said, so that you will know that I am God, your God. The only way to get the children to know is if we know. And in teaching the children, we also come to know on a more true and deep level. Not everybody has children. Not everybody has children at the Seder. A few years ago during COVID, many people made the Seder all alone. So does this all not apply to those people also? Of course it does. Because no matter who's with us at our Seder table or who isn't there, as long as we're there, there's also an inner child, a child inside of us, asking 4 questions, at least 4 questions, usually a lot more than that. And we have to have good answers and good questions back to those answers. And that is what keeps us learning and living and laughing and connected. Shabbat Shalom.